Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to have a little bit of a rant. We need to have a little bit of a chat, because you see, ladies and gentlemen, I think we might have a problem with the release of Lost Origin. I think Lost Origin may have introduced something to the game which is bad for the game and something that I don't like, and that is Sableye. I think the new Sableye that came around in Lost Origin could genuinely be a little bit of a problem. Let me explain. So what we've got with Sableye at the moment, the reason I don't like Sableye is, he's only got one attack, incidentally, but it is an attack that I am very much not a fan of. It is the attack for 1 energy, it's Lost Mine, and what it does for 1 energy is places 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way that you like. The thing is, this only works if you've got 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone. And initially, like a bunch of people, I looked at that and I went, we'll be fine. It's not gonna be that easy. And I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, I have been testing a lot with this particular Sableye. And I can tell you that in a lot of games, unfortunately, it really is that easy. Because to start off with, right, we've got Comfy. Now, Comfy is a phenomenal engine, and I told you before Lost Origin came out that Comfy was great. But I didn't really understand quite how great Comfy was until I sat down and started playing with it. You've got the ability Flower Selecting once during your turn. If this Pokemon is active, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one in your hand and the other one in the Lost Zone. And this does 2 beautiful things. Firstly, it gets you an extra card, which means that you're going to have access to all those cards you need to get Sableye rolling, which is good. And secondly, it is putting 1 card in the Lost Zone. So every time you use Comfy, you're 10% of the way there. Here's the thing, though. In these kind of decks, you're going to be playing a bunch of Escape Rope. And you're going to be playing a bunch of Switch Cart. Switch Cart actually becomes a really good card here because these decks generally only play basic Pokemon. So it's basically, well, it's a switch, but it also heals 30 when you switch, makes it a phenomenal card. So you can switch around, but do remember, even if you're switching in and out, you can still only use each Comfy once per turn. But then you've got Scoop Up Net, which acts as both a switch, but it also resets Comfy, so if you pick it up with Scoop Up Net, pop it back down again, then you get to reuse it. And you can pretty comfortably use 3 or 4 Comfy per turn. It's not that difficult. Then we've got Chorus's Experiment, which is going to be your supporter card of choice. And that's the one that lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. 3 go in your hand, 2 go in your Lost Zone. It's like a super powered Comfy. It's like double Comfy, but you also get another card. You get 3 cards, put 2 in the Lost Zone, that's great. And the thing is, Chorus's Experiment might seem fine, but there's 2 cards that are being played, especially in the aggressive Lost Zone box decks, like the one that got second at Yokohama. Generally, it is Pokestop, which is the stadium of choice here. That is the one that lets you discard the top 3 cards of your deck, but if any of them are item cards, they go into your hand, which is really good. And of course, I am fully aware that Chorus's Experiment is not an item card. That's not passed me by. But you then play Pokegear, and Pokegear is an item card, and Pokegear allows you to look at the top 7 cards of your deck and find yourself a supporter card, and that just massively increases your chances of actually having access to this. See where we're going with this? So you should be getting Chorus's Experiment every turn other than turn 1, where obviously you're not allowed to play a supporter, because Comfy will also allow you to get Chorus's Experiment. And you're going to be using Comfy constantly, and you've even got another card which doesn't actually seem quite as impactful, but it is sneaky good, is Lost Vacuum. That's the one that forces you to Lost Zone a card in your hand, but again, bearing in mind, we want to Lost Zone a card in our hand, and then it lets you Lost Zone a Pokemon Tool or Stadium in play, and that can be your opponent's for disruption, or it can be your own to fill up your Lost Zone. I'm a big fan lately of playing Pokestop, and then my opponent's like, oh, thank goodness, at least I can use that. And then I use it, and then I Lost Vacuum it, and it's 2 more cards in the Lost Zone. So the point is, if you go first especially, going first, turn 2 Sableye, really not difficult. Not difficult at all to get rolling. I get it pretty... if I go first, I got turn 2 Sableye pretty gosh darn consistently. So what's my problem with Sableye? Evolution decks. I'll give you a great example. The other day, I was playing against a Lucario deck online. So I played against a deck that was relying on the Lucario from Brilliant Stars. And here's how the game went. Turn 1, I went first, did a bunch of stuff. Turn 2, my opponent benched double Riolu, so that even if I got a KO on Riolu, they'd still have one that they could evolve next turn. And then on my second turn, I got Sableye. I dropped 6 damage counters on one Riolu. I dropped 6 damage counters on the other Riolu. And my opponent scooped. Because my opponent went into their second turn, and not only did they have no Riolu on the field that they could actually use to evolve, but they were also 2 prizes down. And after a solid 2 turns, my opponent had given up. They were done. Now you might be thinking at this stage, well, Wassy, that's all well and good, but come on. There's a lot of decks out there at the moment that play 70 HP Pokemon, and you're right, there are. Like, for instance, Zoroark. I've made no secret of the fact, especially on my bonus pod over at patreon.com/PTCG Radio, that I am obsessed with the Zoroark from Evolving Skies. It's one of my favourite cards right now. I absolutely adore it. I have been testing so many weird Zoroark decks. And I have abandoned it. And here's the thing. Zoroark actually evolves from Zorua. And Zorua right now, assuming you're using the right one, you've got a 70 HP Zorua. Doesn't matter. You can't do anything. And here's the problem. These Lost Box decks have basically wizened to the fact that there are a lot of 70 HP Pokemon around right now. So they're generally playing just one Galarian Zigzagoon. Remember, I've already told you that they're going to be playing Scoop Up Net anyway for Comfy. They're going to be playing 4 Scoop Up Net. Frankly, if you could play more, you would. So you play one Galarian Zigzagoon, and assuming that's not prized, it's actually really not that difficult at all to KO 2 70 HP Zoruas turn 2 if you go first. And even if I can bench 3 Zorua turn 1, I'm still going 2 prizes down super early, and I've still only got access to 1 Zoroark rather than the 3 I would want if I got 3 Zorua down turn 1 nice and early. And this is my problem with Sableye. In itself, Lost Box is a phenomenal single prize deck. It's the one that generally plays Sableye. You've then got Cramorant, which attacks for 0 energy as long as you've got at least 4 cards in the Lost Zone. And then you also play Radiant Charizard, just kind of for the mid to late game to get big attacks off, to be going after Pokemon V and V-Star and all of that. But other single prize decks are going to really struggle. Now, Regigigas actually probably won't, because the thing with Regigigas is most of them have, look at Regigigas itself, you're looking at 150 HP. Most of them actually won't be one-shot by Sableye, so Regigigas is another single prize deck that will survive in this metagame. But in terms of evolution decks, it is looking very, very rough moving forward with Sableye out. Take Inteleon decks. Inteleon decks have been really good for a while. They've been phenomenal. The problem is you kind of have to use the 60 HP Sobble from Chilling Reign, because that's got Keep Calling, which gets the rest of your Sobble. Well, if I'm using that Sobble, there is a phenomenal chance if I go second, I'm going to keep calling and 2 Sobble are getting KO'd. So I can get 4 Sobble out, but 2 of them are going down immediately, and I'm also under a lot of pressure to evolve them now, or else Sableye will get them. Also, what Sobble really wants to do is dance around with Drizzile, using Scoop Up Net, so you can use multiple Drizzile per turn. The problem is, in order to dance with the Drizziles, you've got to have some Sableye sitting on the bench, ready to evolve into Drizzile, and anytime you leave them sitting on the bench, then Sableye's going to have an absolute field day. And let's not forget decks like the one that came second in Yokohama are even playing stuff like Echoing Horn. Lets you grab a basic and put it back on the bench. Because actually, Echoing Horn's amazing, because you can just take 60 HP Pokemon from the discard, bench them, and then KO them with Sableye. I play with a lot of single prize decks. They interest me. I like playing around. I have abandoned my testing of Zoroark decks. because I don't think I've got a great matchup against Sableye. And here's the problem. It's not just the Sableye Lost Box deck. But let's not forget that Giratina is a deck that relies on the Lost Zone, and Giratina is a deck that plays Psychic Energy. There is zero chance Giratina's not going to be playing Sableye. Now, to be fair, Giratina might not be playing Galarian Zigzagoon, but then again, it is going to be playing Scoop up net because it's still using a comfy engine. So one Galarian Zigzagoon is not that difficult to put in the deck against these one-prize decks. And then, of course, Goodra is another deck that's very good, coming out of Lost Origin, which is going to be playing this same comfy engine. Now, to be fair, Goodra doesn't naturally play Psychic Energy. It plays Water and Metal. So I'm not saying Hisuian Goodra is going to be playing this, but I'm saying that if they tech in, one or two energy, Psychic Energy, or even something like Aurora Energy, then all of a sudden they can be playing this. And let's not forget, you can use Mirage Gate. And Mirage Gate is going to allow you to go and search for those basic energy. So all of a sudden, the exact counts are less important than they were because you can search. And because Goodra's got a colorless energy in its attack cost, you can genuinely afford to play one or two Psychic Energy without hitting the consistency of the deck too much. And I'm not saying that every Hisuian Goodra deck is going to be playing Sableye. I'm saying that every Hisuian Goodra deck can be playing Sableye. But now you're taking a hard loss. If you're taking, these single prize decks, you're pretty much taking a hard loss to these Lost Box decks. Like, when I'm testing this deck a lot, because it is a really fun deck to play, annoyingly. And, Evolution single prize decks are kind of hilarious. I've yet to lose to one. It's kind of brilliant. And then Giratina can make its matchup just as good. And Hisuian Goodra could. And now all of a sudden, it's not just that you've got to try and counter the format like you always had to with decks like Zoroark. Now you've got to basically concede to these Sableye decks. And maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I've gone too far. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section. But Sableye has done what ADP did. And that is, it's made me not want to play single prize decks. ADP basically could take two prizes off a single prize deck, and what it did was it took away your advantage to the point where my single prize decks, I never got to the point where I could beat ADP consistently. I could beat every other deck but not ADP, and I feel the same with Sableye. These single prize decks are just not good enough against Sableye, because especially if they go first, they can wreck your evolution line before you ever get going. I think Sableye is a phenomenal card, but I think single prize decks going forward are going to be Lost Zone, and then it's going to be stuff like Regigigas that have got high enough HP to stand against them. Outside of that, I am genuinely worried for single prize evolution decks, because I'm testing them as heavily as basically anybody, and I'm not kidding, I've given up. I don't see how Zoroark decks and things like that can survive right now, because Sableye is too good, and I genuinely do think it's a problem. But I want to know what you think. I want to know if you think I'm exaggerating. I want to know if you think I'm on something. I want to know anything you want to tell me. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk Pokemon card games, all kinds of fun things. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, you can get weekly bonus pods where I answer all of your questions, you can join a Discord and chat Pokemon with us, and frankly have an awful lot of fun. But by far the most important... Oh, and give shout-outs. Shout-outs are important. Like the lovely Martin Cornwall, who has literally been supporting PTCG Radio since I very first started the podcast over a decade ago. Martin Cornwall is a very lovely person, and I'm a big fan. Thank you very much for the support and for being a lovely person. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.